I'm Dr. Berry, licensed psychologist, and here we talk about psychology and true crime. Today, we're going to take a little break from true crime and talk about Ginny and Georgia. I will have a spoiler free version. So if you have not watched season 3 yet, I will kind of give a warning when I'm going into information from season 3. But this show is about a mother, Georgia, her daughter, Jenny, and her son, Austin. And it is this tale of this family. So, Georgia gave birth to her first child, Jenny, when she was still a teenager. And you kind of see some of her struggles. And when we talk about what possible diagnoses a fictional character might have, if Georgia came to my office, or if one of the children came to my office, I would and I was hearing the family story. Georgia presents with many symptoms of CPTSD, so complex PTSD, and possibly a few cluster B personality disorders, which is why I also want to talk about some treatments for cluster B personality disorders and also treatments for psychopathy, for antisocial like behavior, because throughout the seasons you find out about more and more about what Georgia has done. And what Georgia does is within the family, she encourages secrets, but she wants to know all about her children's lives and she does not want them to keep secrets from her, but she has them keep secrets from other people. And in my opinion, she comes off incredibly selfish and very self centered. She says what she's doing is for her children, but when you sit back and watch and you compare how other people react to her children and what they're experiencing, she often centers her wants, her needs, and things within her life. And so welcome Lisa and welcome to everybody that's watching. And so borderline personality disorder would be within that cluster B. Because I think she has a few traits of a few other things that we'll get into in a little bit. In season 1, we're introduced to this family and you kind of start hearing about a lot of the things that the family has been through. And Georgia really comes off as a survivor, but she's really good at manipulating and conning and doing whatever she needs to do to get whatever she wants or needs. And along the way, we find out that her first husband died due to so she wanted to give him something that would make him fall asleep, but she ended up giving him a lethal dose and he ended up dying. Her second husband was showing some inappropriate behaviors towards her daughter Jenny, and while but it was things were starting to escalate, and Georgia had her own history of harm by her stepfather, who she also attempted to pew pew him, but Jenny's father was there and was able to stop that. And and then in season 2, one of her friends, the husband is terminally ill, and the friend is kind of, like she's venting as a friend, just talking about how difficult things are for her financially. It's costing a lot. And Georgia ends up using a pillow and he stops breathing. I think y'all can read between the lines for my YouTube censorship. And so she was never married to Zion. They were never legally married. Her first husband, she married him because CPS was going to get involved and they were going to take uh, Jenny. And but he ended up kind of manipulating her, and but he so she never married Jenny's father Zion, and they have a relationship that's In my opinion, I think he enabled her behavior sometimes without really knowing it. And he didn't ask more questions at times when maybe he could have, and I think he just trusted her that she was doing what was best, that she was putting the kids' needs first, and some of that, comes to light, and once again, no spoilers for season 3 yet, but some things come out in season 3. Uh, and her son witnessed what she did to her friend's husband, and at the end of season 2, Georgia gets married to the mayor, Paul, and she's arrested at the wedding. And that's how season 2 ended. We waited an entire year almost for season 3, and season 3 has been one of my absolute favorites. So before I get into some of the spoilers, even into season 1 and 2, I was seeing signs of borderline personality disorder within Georgia because she has this intense need to be loved, but the way that she loves is if you're doing what she wants, and she can just be um and then and her entire personality seems to be a trauma response, and that in no way excuses any of of her behavior. It does not excuse anything, it just kind of helps me understand. She's still very much stuck in that teenager that maybe wasn't in a safe situation and had to do whatever she needed to survive. And she's never matured emotionally, she's never matured along the way to be able to make adult-like decisions. And, um, and so within all of this, you end up there are trigger warnings for harm towards the self because I think it was in season 2 they realize that Jenny, the daughter, that she is using fire on herself, and she ends up getting into therapy. And I really like her therapist, and in season 3, I love the therapist even more because the therapist is doing a really good job giving Jenny a safe place to express herself, letting Jenny, open up, and letting Jenny know that the secrets are causing issues and are causing problems. In season 1, there's an issue with the AP English teacher because Jenny is very smart and she's very gifted, and, but she pushes back on some social issues, and it ends up causing an issue with the AP teacher, and she ends up, going into just regular English. And some of those things come out we circle back to that in season 3. Um, yes, Lisa, I agree that she comes off as a developmentally arrested, teenager. And it reminded me kind of Lori Vallow a little, where she's still, like, very much like she's wearing her hair in this childlike, and adults can wear a high ponytail, so adults can do her the hairstyle that she's doing. Um, but I just wonder if she does it as a way to try to make herself look cute or younger or small, and I don't know that actually works for her. And before I went live, I was catching up on day 4 of Lori Vallow's trial. I'm gonna be peeking in every so often on things. As you all know, I will not be going live on Saturday or Tuesday next week, but I will see you all next Saturday. And so we will do that. Going back to Ginny in Georgia with some of the symptoms and things that I've seen, she also kind of shows some histrionic personality traits too. And in searching Ginny in Georgia mental health, there was a Reddit poster. I think it's let me see what was the username. It was coda nerd, and they mentioned thinking that Georgia has severe CPTSD. Her entire personality and the way she lives her life is a trauma response. And she wants to be safe and independent, but the way that she goes about that is is problematic. So she loves Paul, but then if he doesn't serve a particular need for her, she goes around and tries to find ways to get those needs met. I think including flirting with the coffee owner. Like she flirts with all these men, with all these people. I think she tries to use her looks and the pretty privilege to get her way. And Lisa, I agree, using fashion and sexuality to her advantage. And I think she does that on purpose. Um uh it ends up being a lot. She also shows some signs of antisocial personality disorder because the rules do not apply to her. If you say, Georgia, don't do this. It's like it's like she has it's the pathological demand avoidance, PDA. If you tell her to do something, she immediately wants to do the opposite. And she does not live within the confines of the law. I think it was true that she did like steal money from the county, but she didn't get caught. So once somebody was kind of thinking, "Oh, I think she's stealing money from the county," then they finally like I think that's when she tried to get the mayor to fall in love with her because when she initially saw Paul, the mayor, I don't know that she liked him for him. I think she wanted to be married to the mayor. She liked the power and the prestige and I think she wanted him on her side. But to kind of create this triangle where it's us against the world. Yes, I and so very much like Lori Daybell. Um, except so I don't think Georgia would ever hurt her children intentionally. I do think that in the moment she can get kind of impulsive and there could be an accident in a very stressful moment. And I agree that Georgia's behaviors appear to be a defense mechanism versus Lori's. I mean, that just like she uses her religious views, delusions, and she tries to minimize and escape from responsibility. Georgia is able, I think, to feel remorse and to feel bad for things, but I do think she justifies it in her mind and she thinks this is what's best for me. This is what is best for my family. We are about to move into some of the season 3 spoilers, okay? So if you haven't watched season 3 and if you don't like spoilers, here is your warning, okay? I do plan to go back and add where we talk about treating cluster B personality traits and and psychopathy. So I will add that at the later today or tomorrow. We'll see. All right. So season 3, a lot of things come up, and uh, Jenny, Georgia's daughter, ends up getting involved in she ends up getting involved in poetry, and there's a lot that happens in season 3. Please let me know if you all have questions or things that you definitely wanted for me to talk about or cover this for this episode and this season, because in season 3 Georgia loses custody of her children to their fathers. I forgot to mention that there was a history of domestic violence with her youngest, her son Austin, with his father. And I think Georgia framed him for a crime that he went to jail for. And of course, he's not going to be happy about that. And in season 3, he uses threats and intimidations, and the whole time they were very worried and fearful about something happening to Austin while he was in his father's care. And there was a private detective that's been following Georgia because he does view her as a serial killer, that she has this history of her husband's dying. Because her second husband, she ended up getting his estate. So I think she ended up getting a lot of money after his death. He owned some yoga studios or something like that, and she ended up getting a lot of money. So his family hired a private detective who broke like the PI was like, he's kind of handsome. Like he's not too bad on the eyes. There are some attractive people in this show. But the PI ends up testifying against her. And you also see this season where um, Georgia kind of blames the fathers for her losing custody and doesn't seem to grasp or get that. And she's claiming to be innocent. She later finds out that her son witnessed and viewed everything, but they still are there trying to fight for her. They're still trying to get her off, and nobody knows everything except Jenny. Her daughter Jenny is the only person that knows all her dark secrets. Jenny is the one, and Jenny, she can't and so no child should have to carry that their parent has, like, gotten away with unaliving multiple people and has done all these things and uses men to get different things. Like, that shouldn't fall on a child. And before Jenny found healthier ways to cope with her emotions, to cope with what she was dealing with, that's when she would use the lighter. And in this episode, she does talk with her therapist about having strong urges, that when everything gets out of control, that's when a lot of that comes up. Season 3 also has trigger warnings for with some of the other, so not with Jenny and Georgia, but with some of the peripheral people. There are issues with alcohol, there are issues with eating, and body image and sexual identity. Like, there are a lot of other issues that come up in season 3, but I really just wanted to focus on Georgia because as we look at true crime, as we talk about taking a look at how you would treat, like what kind of made her this way, and she does have a history of getting away with things and using manipulation and control to do that, but it does have an impact on the people around her. And I think that's what Zion, who is Georgia, no, Jenny's father, I think he really wanted Georgia to see, like, all that she's put the kids through, because this is the season that he finds out that that the children, that they had been homeless for a period of time, and they had done car camping. They had been living in cars. But Georgia had encouraged the kids to lie to him and say, "Oh, we're in an apartment. Everything's fine," when everything wasn't fine. Because I do think she desperately feared losing them, but I do think there were times that she needed help. And I think she was insecure about her ability to parent and provide, because Zion's mother would come in and try to support. But Zion's mother was like, I think if Zion's mother had known how bad things were, she would have petitioned for custody. So I think Georgia could have lost the kids to Zion, or at least Jenny, to Zion's mother at some point, if everybody truly had known how bad things had gotten. In season 2, there was also an incident where Austin's father was kind of being, or like, came in the house and there were all these things going on, and a pew pew ended up going off in the house, which Zion wasn't aware of. He finds all these things out, and of course, he is extremely upset. And uh, and and Lisa, I get what you mean by saying that, like, because I think Zion was likely raised middle class or so, and but I think a parent, if there was another way, because I think Jenny, her I'm sorry, Georgia. I think and it's interesting that I get the 2 confused because they're very much enmeshed, especially in season 1 and 2. And in season 3, Jenny is trying to find and be her own person, but I do think along the way she's learned and picked up some things from her mother and has this any means necessary attitude too, which I do hope it gets renewed for a season 4 because I do think they might explore how the impact of Austin witnessing what happened, and does he kind of go down this dark path? Because in season 3, everybody's saying, "Hey, Austin needs some help." Like, please get Austin some help. Um, Austin, from a young age, he used his Harry Potter glasses to try to hide. I think Austin has kind of had some struggles along the way anyway, but it becomes more evident, especially towards the end of season 3. And another big spoiler. Welcome to everybody that's in the chat and to the replay crew later. Something that came out with Austin in season 3 is, once they found out that, because Georgia's case was not going well, because we see the trial. They have the trial, and Austin's father threatens to take him out of state, which would mean Jenny and Austin would be separated. And Austin's father also grabbed Jenny so hard that it left a bruise, which they could have reported to Child Protective Services. So, as a therapist, if a child, and now just because a child reports a bruise and I report it, it does not mean that they will be taken from the home or that any of those things will happen. But him grabbing Jenny like that was assault. Like, that was illegal. And they could have, but Jenny kept it to herself, except I think she let her mom know, and I think she let Austin know. Um and I think the neighbor, she let the neighbor who it was her husband that died, because the neighbor whose husband died, Georgia did not throw that neighbor under the bus, because they could have pointed the finger at the wife, that the husband's death, that the wife benefited from it. Now, she had nothing to do with it, but they could have tried that as a defense, and Georgia would not allow her first lawyer to do that. Yes, I agree. I definitely think Austin is, and I think they were kind of hinting that Austin's going to go down this kind of dark path come season 4. I I do think so. And um how I was I didn't I didn't know. I was like, is Georgia gonna go to jail for the rest of her life? Because that's what Georgia, if she's convicted of, unaliving her neighbor's husband, she's facing life in jail. And I was just like, how is she gonna get away with it? And I was not expecting Jenny to rally the troops. So Jenny ends up talking to the ex-wife, so not the ex-wife, the wife of the husband that died, because she had had an affair. So the husband that died, his wife she had had an affair with the coffee shop owner. And so Jenny lies to her and tells her that there's video footage of that. And there's not. And Jenny goes to Austin, and they agree to point the finger at someone, that somebody needs that, so that Austin was going to say that he saw the murder, which was true, but he was gonna point the finger at somebody else. So when Jenny told him that his dad was going to take him and that his dad had hurt him and that he was a bad man, y'all, Austin on the stand points the finger at his dad. And as I was just like, "Oh my god." Like, I was kudos to the writers. The show was done extremely well, and once again, their portrayal of, I think they do a good job of portraying complex trauma and portraying a dysfunctional family dynamic. I think Jenny is very much parentified. I think Jenny almost acts like Georgia's mom sometimes. And I think Jenny tries to comfort Georgia. There was a time when Jenny, this season, when Jenny needed her mom's comfort and her mom was able to be there for her. Um, Jenny goes through her own dark stuff this season, but I was not expecting that twist and turn. And the mom was pretty was kinda like, because I don't think Georgia was aware who they were gonna point the finger at. So Georgia didn't know, and so when Austin said it, like, even Georgia's surprised, and, um and I think she's a little scared of what's Jenny going to turn into. Like, what has she picked up? What has she learned from me? I don't know that Jenny will go down the same dark path as her mom, but she has definitely learned how to use manipulation and control to get what she wants. Like, she's definitely picked that up and learned that. And looking at dysfunctional family dynamics, let's see. So there are 8 common dysfunctional family roles. Let me see if I can make this. I'll make this bigger, make myself smaller, and then I will make this even bigger. I do have the link to this down in the description. Please note articles on Psychology Today, they are not, it's not a research article, but I did review this and the information in here is pretty accurate with what we learn about family roles and family dynamics. And so common family roles are the golden child, the person who can do no wrong. In adulthood, this role can manifest as perfectionism and low self esteem. It's common for people to become obsessively attached to others as they learn to get their value and worth from external sources. So that is the golden child. We also have the hero, the one who proves to the rest of the world that the family is all right. Sometimes golden child and hero can kind of go together, but not always. They hold on to the idea like if Jimmy is a football star, then our family can't be as bad. And so the hero and the golden child, they are both in a dysfunctional family unit. It's like our family can't be that bad. We had somebody that became a doctor. When it's like, no, doctors can come from dysfunctional families. A football star can come from a dysfunctional family. But sometimes that hero is meant to save the rest of the family. In adulthood, they're often drawn to achievement and success and are prone to perfectionism and overworking or burnout. The mascot is the one who diffuses conflict in the family, very skilled with humor. Often, comedians and actors and entertainers, often, if they do have histories of dysfunctional families, they were often the one that could put on a show to diffuse conflict. So if mom and dad are arguing, that the child then like senses that conflict and subconsciously like starts performing in a way where the parents then are like laughing and they almost forget about the argument. Or if there's something happening between a parent and a sibling, that they're the ones that come in to make everybody laugh and get the attention on themselves. And it's kind of in a positive way, but uh, but it's away from a situation that could turn volatile. The identified patient is the person, and sometimes we think of this as the scapegoat as well, but this article defines it as the identified patient. It's the person who's the reason the family is getting therapy or the individual is getting therapy. But as I talk to this, let's say 14-year-old child, and I hear about the rest of the family, it's like, oh my, I need everybody on this couch, because it's a whole system that is dysfunctional. Because I could work on treating that identified patient, but sometimes that dysfunctional system will work against the positive work in therapy. And I'm gonna make myself big when I talk about this, because what I mean by that is that sometimes in families, as people start to heal, it can trigger other people's pain. I'll say that again. Sometimes in therapy, as the identified patient or the scapegoat heals, it can trigger other people's pain, because in the family, that scapegoat or that identified patient, they're the problem, not the family. But as that person starts to get better and the family is still dysfunctional, sometimes they will start to sabotage that identified patient or that scapegoat's treatment. And I like to warn clients and families about this, and that's where often doing some family work and and talking with parents about how is it now, realizing that maybe the marriage is the big issue here and not this child's sadness. That, oh, the sadness was masking the fact that there were some major marital issues. And I see Christina saying that she can verify that this is true, and yes, this does happen. And all right, so let me make myself small again so we can keep looking at this. All right. So the scapegoat or the black sheep, that's the person that's kind of an outlier. That's the person that's different. Sometimes this can be the truth teller in the family, but um, they're the opposite of the hero, often the focus of the family's problems. The one and the family might think our family would be better if this person wasn't in it. And then let's say that person goes off into the military, but then the family, now there's a new problem child or a new scapegoat that emerges because it's the family system that was broken and not necessarily something with that particular. Now, maybe that individual did have some issues, but like sometimes these issues run deeper. Um, the rest of the family is often uncomfortable with their honesty and will distance themselves from them. All right. The lost child. And this one, oh, this one breaks my heart, because this is the one who is trying to survive unnoticed. And I think there were times that Austin, because I think Austin has problems, but a lot of attention and focus is on Jenny, because I think Jenny, like, outwardly expresses, like, she she shows things out loud. I think Austin is, like, quiet, and I think he is struggling, and so I kinda saw Austin as maybe being a bit of a lost child, um, because getting noticed means getting in trouble or being in the limelight. In adulthood, this person might maintain a feeling of being lost and unseen, often having low self-esteem and or self-worth. They may struggle with making decisions and constantly feeling invisible or not being seen. All right. The enabler or the caretaker. So I do think that Jenny is a caretaker and might kind of enable some of her mom's stuff, but she's just a child trying to survive in this dysfunctional system. And so this is the person who maintains a look of normalcy within the family. They support and affirm the unhealthy behavior of other family members that might have substance disorders or untreated mental illness or personality dysfunction. Sometimes this role might be merged with the golden child, but not always. In adulthood, this often manifests into more this fix it, always just trying to fix things, fix people, when they're often very broken themselves. And then the parentified child, the one who will take on the role of of because I think Ginny has kind of been Georgia's best friend. And but I do sometimes think it can verge on mothering almost or caretaking. And so that's why I mentioned that Jenny very much comes off parentified to me. All right. And there's no boundaries. And this season has some fun mental health. So it's fun, it's true, but it's funny where Ginny and Georgia, they're like Ginny is asking for boundaries and Georgia is like, no, and then Georgia used the word gaslighting wrong, and then one of my favorite quotes, because it was on the previews for this one, is, Georgia's talking about being ride or die, and Jenny was like, "Where are we going, and why do I have to die?" And that touched my heart so much because I was like, "I am not a ride or die kind of person." Like, I have questions. Like, I have so many questions, and I posted that back when that clip came out. It's like, like, where are we going? Do we have any snacks? Like, how many stops can we make along the way? Like, I'm not ride or die. I really like the show. There are some things that can be triggering, so people have to be self-aware as they're watching certain things. This season definitely has some dark moments. I think for me, season 2 might have been season 2 was pretty dark, but maybe I don't know. Season 2 was a lot. I enjoyed season 3. I don't know why. I really, really enjoyed it. Like, season 3 has been my favorite season. Given that Jenny was so parentified, I'm rethinking my assessment of her previous immature behavior. So she either engages in very adult behavior or more immature childish. But I do think sometimes she's had to be the she's had like she's been the adult. And I think that's where because she goes in to have a medical procedure and she was going to do it on her own, and her mother knew that somebody needed to be there with her, but her mother didn't call her dad to be there for her. She called her ex-boyfriend to be there for Jenny, who did show up and was there. But yeah. So Jenny's ex-boyfriend, because they're not dating in this season. He or are you talking about the friend? So Carol, tell me if you're talking about the ex that has the alcohol problem or her poetry guy. He was adorable. He was so quirky. or or poetry guy. I'm thinking you're thinking about the ex-boyfriend. Um and I think he was pushing Jenny away because he was so depressed and he likely has a full-blown alcohol problem. Uh was this the show that said live, laugh, and Lexapro? I think that was this one. I'm pretty sure he said live, laugh, and and Lexapro. Yeah, so, Marcus, the ex-boyfriend. Yeah. Um, and I do think he might get some help because at the end of season 3, he's going to get, inpatient treatment for substances. So that is a part of that season. Let me see if I can get rid of this. Yeah, Google wants to put ads. So, I love this picture because it talks about, because I went through those different roles, but this image has what's going on the outside for each of these roles and what's happening on the inside. And these are general. These do not apply to everyone, but um so for the lost child, on the outside, people see them as shy and quiet. They have a very vivid fantasy life, often engaging in solitary endeavors. They might like they don't really excel, but they're not like they're just mediocre. They're just doing enough to not get attention. They often attach to things and not people, and on the inside, they're feeling rejection, hurt, and anxiety. The problem child, on the outside, we see the hostile, defiant, rule breaking behavior. On the inside, they're likely feeling rejection, hurt, guilt, jealousy, and anger. The chief enabler on the outside, they might seem self righteous, super responsible, sarcastic, passive. They might get physically sick a lot. They might be the martyr of the family. And I'm glad that for this, they include physically sick for the enabler because even if somebody's pretending like everything is okay, the body does not lie. And for CPTSD, for complex trauma or developmental trauma, often clients will have physical symptoms. And it was ACEs book, Nadine. I'm trying to, yes, the Deepest Well is a book by Nadine Burks Harris. She was a part of the research team that developed the and let me share this screen. So this is the book, The Deepest Well, and healing the long-term effects of childhood trauma. And she's a medical doctor that in her clinic, she was seeing a lot of kids referred for asthma, but as she started asking questions or they're getting referred for behavioral things, but there seemed to be more going on. And a lot of her work led to trauma informed practices in medicine, where instead of looking at what's wrong with people, we take a look at what's happened to people. All right, let's go back to this one. And so on the inside, the chief enabler might be feeling anger, guilt, hurt, and low self esteem. The mascot on the outside, we see immature behavior, cute. They might be hyperactive. They might distance themselves, excuse me, especially emotional distancing, and they might be kind of emotionally fragile. On the inside, there's often a lot of fear, anxiety, and insecurity. And then the family hero on the outside, they look like a good kid, high achiever, follows the rules, seeks approval, very responsible. On the inside, they might be feeling guilt, hurt, and be feeling inadequate. And the thing with family roles is all families have roles and all people can fall into one or all of those roles at one time or another. But within a dysfunctional family system, the system needs people in these roles. The system needs to take some of the pressure so that the system stays dysfunctional. In order for the system to heal, often the system needs like needs a lot of work. And that's where sometimes the people within that system often need to do some work. Um, so I love talking about icebergs when we talk about behaviors because often the behaviors that we see, there's often something deeper going on inside. So that's why I personally don't diagnose oppositional defiant disorder. Um, Unless I do diagnose conduct disorder if I'm working with somebody that's like, you know, I have worked with teens that have like been caught stealing cars or like stealing from stores, like if they're breaking laws and have charges, because there are certain criteria for conduct disorder. The reason why I don't diagnose oppositional defiant disorder is because sometimes undiagnosed ADHD or there because often oppositional defiant disorder is strongly linked to parental inconsistency. So that's where I often recommend family therapy for situations like that, and the parents getting on the same page. Yes, Lumiere, please, I let us know what you think of the rest of the season once you catch up. This is a show that I often binge, so I probably watched season 3 in like 2 days. Probably like Saturday. It was probably Friday and Saturday. I binged it in 2 days. I totally did. All right. Now, when we look at cluster B personality disorders and the treatments, And I do have a link to this down in the description. We'll first start off with what are the cluster B personality disorders. So they are narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and histrionic personality disorder. Okay. Narcissistic, and once again, narcissism can be a spectrum. All of these personality disorders can be a spectrum, where a person can just have traits of narcissism or traits of borderline personality. With people under the age of 20, I try to stay away from diagnosing personality disorders because personality is still forming. Now, if it would be helpful for the child to get a specific type of treatment, I often say, like, monitor for cluster B, from for characterological emotional dysregulation, which is like me saying, um, cluster B type traits, or monitor for increased aggression. Like, sometimes I'll put it, if I need to make a note, I'll make a note in the diagnosis section. All right, because I've seen people diagnosed with personality disorders in their teens, but really it was the parents reporting all of this. The parents had poor boundaries. They were in a dysfunctional system. And once this child got out of that dysfunctional system, their a lot of their initial behaviors sometimes resolved on their own. So that's why I'm careful about doing that. That's just my own personal style. So, narcissistic personality disorder involves low empathy, an intense desire for admiration, a tendency to exploit others, um, and they might come off selfish, demanding, and self important. And so, I definitely think Georgia shows some signs of some narcissism. And then with borderline personality disorder, there's a pattern of unstable moods and intense reactions, impulsive decision making. Um, Individuals with BPD can be extremely sensitive and emotionally volatile. And so that's where dialectical behavior therapy, teaching the individual skills to manage their emotions, because underneath all of that is feelings of emptiness and a fear of abandonment. With antisocial personality disorder, sometimes called sociopathy or psychopathy, involves a pattern of reckless, impulsive behavior and a disregard for the well being of others. A sociopath or psychopath might steal, lie, or put others in danger without remorse. And I think Georgia definitely, like, she's three people aren't here. I don't know. Like, she's stolen. She's been a part of a biker gang. Like, she's done a lot of things. She also tried to run. She stole the neighbor's bike to try to run. And yes, I won't ruin the rest for the person that hasn't watched it yet. All right. Histrionic personality disorder follows a pattern of extreme attention seeking, self centeredness, and a overly dramatic display of emotion. And I do think Georgia shows some signs of this as well. And and some people call it, um it's not quite borderline personality disorder, because the emotional expression, it's not as deep as borderline personality disorder. So there are times, like with Lori Vallow, when she gets mad, she's mad for like a minute, but then she goes back to her normal. Versus an individual with borderline personality disorder. I've worked with individuals, once they got mad, they might stay in that mad state, or they might ruminate in that state for an extended period of time. And their emotion goes deep. It's not a shallow emotion. And um all the symptoms of cluster B personality disorders is emotional instability, impulsive behavior, interpersonal issues, um, and often what underlies cluster B personality disorders is insecure attachment. And Because often they're insecurely attached to their caregivers. Not always, but there is some research saying Parental role modeling, history of harm, can also be risk factors for cluster B personality disorders. Every individual I've met with a BP with a bipolar, sorry, with a borderline personality disorder diagnosis, or if I've diagnosed it myself, if complex personality, if CPTSD was an option, they would meet criteria for that as well. The DSM-5 is not as trauma sensitive as I would like, because a lot of the personality disorders, if the person receives um, adequate trauma treatment and the treatment that they really need, as long as they stick with that treatment, some of these can be treated. Because sometimes we talk about, can these diagnoses be treated? Yes. The treatment process can be difficult because not all therapists are trained in working with individuals with complex trauma. And so that's where, if an individual has a personality disorder, I often encourage them to find a therapist that is certified, like has went through the long DBT program, like offers official dialectical behavior therapy, or that they work with somebody that is trained in EMDR or some type of specific trauma treatment. Because just because a clinician works with trauma doesn't mean that they are trained for complex cases or complex situations, because it is just very different. Um, all right. And so, what is dialectical behavior therapy? DBT is a type of therapy that is skills based. And the most important part of DBT are the skills. And it's used to treat individuals that struggle with harm, self, with thoughts of self deleting, PTSD, substance use disorders, depression, anxiety, and BPD. And uh there are skills training where they work on mindfulness training. So mindfulness is being present in this moment, because often trauma tries to pull you into the past and anxiety tries to pull you into a dreadful unforeseen future, and mindfulness is being in this moment at Eastern Standard Time, 6:37 PM. It's being here in this moment, not thinking about my son needing dinner at 7 PM. Dinner's already made, we're fine. But so that's practicing mindfulness. And mindfulness is a practice. All of these skills are a practice. I have been trained in DBT skills. I don't do the full DBT program, because there are DBT programs that include group therapy, that include crisis intervention and coaching, and that also do the skills. And it can be a like a regimented program, and some people need that regimented program. And so I refer people if they need that full program. All right. Distress tolerance is understanding and managing emotions in difficult situations without responding with harmful behaviors. So that's a description of distress tolerance. An example of distress tolerance is, if an individual wakes up agitated, the things they do to lower that agitation before they leave the door. So, because we've all had like didn't sleep well, or my alarm didn't go off and so I'm rushing. For me, I use music to ground myself. Um, I also have a it is what it is. So if my alarm didn't go off and I'm running late, if I hit really bad traffic, now my initial response is, but it's like, it is what it is. If I'm stuck in traffic, I ignored Waze and didn't get off when it told me to, and now I'm stuck. I might just need to warn my client that I'll be running behind. But yeah, I normally pay attention to Waze, and so that doesn't happen too often. Um, Interpersonal effectiveness is another group of skills that talks about um, learning how to ask for what you want and get needs met and set boundaries while respecting the boundaries of yourself and others. And Georgia definitely needs some interpersonal effectiveness skills because she uses manipulation and control to get her needs met. Um, Something that's within DBT is non-judgment. It's addressing behavior without judgment. Because the minute you try to address Georgia's behavior, she thinks you're criticizing her. You're calling her a bad mom. She immediately makes it all about herself. And it was really interesting because um in the and I saw a question and I'll have to come back to it. In the therapy session in season 3 that Ginny does with her father, she has a family therapy session with her father. Because I remember the therapy session she did with her mom completely derailed that entire session, and the session with her dad was night and day difference. And Jenny noticed it, just how different it was, because her dad was able to take feedback. He was able to hear, "You weren't there, and I needed you." And he didn't get defensive. He didn't get, he didn't react the way that, Georgia likely would have react. Um Avoidant personality disorder is in cluster C. Okay. So when we talk about the clusters, cluster A has paranoid personality disorder, schizoid personality disorder, and schizotypal personality disorder. We went over the cluster B, and then cluster C has avoidant, dependent, and obsessive compulsive personality disorder. All right. I hope that's helpful. So what makes it complex PTSD versus regular PTSD? So a 21-year-old that goes off to war and experiences combat trauma would likely be diagnosed with PTSD. Complex PTSD is being born to a teen mom that has her own history of SA and then like experiencing like it's like trauma after trauma. It's more of a it's not one thing that happened to a person. It's not a series within like a war that happened to a person. It is like a lifetime. So like or it's like trauma after trauma after trauma. And developmental trauma is another way to look at CPTSD. Um, but what makes it complex is that it's not just this one instance. It wasn't this one incident that happened. It wasn't this one situation. It's this like childhood of trauma. So um, uh, Christina mentioned DBT is so useful, and if the individual is resistant, um, so I like there is DBT tunes. Like there are a lot of resources on YouTube for dialectical behavior therapy or skills training. And I use a lot of images. I also self-disclose to my clients that I practice these skills myself. And also everything doesn't work for everyone. So if this isn't helpful for a person, then we do something else. But yes. All right. All right, good. I answered all the questions. So good. Let me know if y'all have any other questions because we're starting to get to the end where we're going to start to wrap up. Um, the other thing that I wanted to talk about was psychopathy or treating antisocial personality traits. And so here is a resource. It is psychopathy. Yes, is um, and some people say psychopathy. So I think people say the same word two different ways. But uh, the different types of treatment for individuals with maladaptive patterns in thought, behavior, emotion regulation, and relationships. So sometimes they start with cognitive behavior therapy. I thought risk need responsivity. So I hadn't heard about this. I hadn't heard about this one. As I mentioned, I don't work with individuals that are court ordered for anger management or um, people that have that have been caught unaliving people or anything. And so that's why I wanted to take a deeper look into some of these things. Um, so risk need responsivity model for offender assessment. All right. And so the risk principle is to match the service to the offender's risk to reoffend. So somebody with a high risk would have a higher level of service. Someone with a low risk would likely have a lower level of service. A need principle based on probably the person's history, and then responsivity. All right. So I have a link to this down in the description. I'm down in the description if people want to learn more about this. But I had not heard about risk need responsivity. It is designed for adults in detention centers and aims to provide the most intensive service for those at the highest risk. Because jails are supposed to rehab people. Now, often jails make people worse. So I know people that have developed PTSD while being incarcerated because of the things they saw, heard, experienced. If they didn't have some PTSD before going in, um, because even just being detained at a place like people, because people can have certain experiences and so this approach emphasizes building self-management skills because often people that struggle with staying within the boundaries of the law, they often struggle with managing themselves and saying no to themselves. And if I want it, I just do it. Like if I want it, I take it. It's like no, like you have to be able to manage yourself. You have to be able to tell yourself no and to live within the boundaries and restrictions and all those things. Um, Building a pro-social identity because sometimes a person has so like somebody that might be gang affiliated might have an antisocial identity like I'm big, I'm bad, people are afraid of me. And a person might like that like that might make them feel safer when people fear them and developing a more pro-social identity and then also teaching anger management skills. I do like a schema focused therapy. It addresses maladaptive thinking patterns. And I might have to do another video for maybe for one of our mental health awareness months where we talk more about schema focused therapy and some of the common thought traps that people can fall into. Um, Transference focused therapy. And that is a psychodynamic. So Freud was the like psychodynamic person, like, so tell me about your mother. But psychodynamic uses the therapeutic relationship to give feedback and talk about like I wonder if people feel afraid of you like and what do you get from people feeling afraid and this is what happened in our session. I set a boundary and I saw you get upset, but it's using what's happening in the therapy room to give the person feedback. And so yeah, so that's there, and once again I have that link down in the description. um Yay, I'm so glad this was helpful. I appreciate you all hanging out. Earlier today, I did a live with the other Dr. Berry psychologist, and so we were able to just chat and we talked about starting a private practice. If there are any mental health clinicians that are thinking about starting a private practice, and we also talked about our books a little bit. But I appreciate you all. I will miss going live, but I'm gonna have some fun with family. I will talk about things. I'll probably do a members only stream for June when I get back. I will schedule that, and so y'all will know when that is coming, and have a bit of a debrief and chat about some things, and we will go from there. Okay. I hope y'all have a great rest of your week and weekend. Justice for Brandon Boudreaux. We are hoping the jury is paying attention and is seeing all that's kind of being put out there. And I will see y'all in a little bit. Bye.